The Ice Age Apocalypse. When darkness ruled the earth for 100,000 years, imagine a world where summer never comes. Where darkness swallows the sun for months. Where stepping outside means instant death. This wasn't a myth. This was Earth 20,000 years ago, and the humans who survived? They weren't supposed to. Tonight, you'll discover why the Ice Age was humanity's greatest nightmare and our most important teacher. Right now, you're sitting in warmth, light, safety, but 20,000 years ago, your ancestors were huddled in a cave, watching the entrance, waiting for something in the darkness. Because when the sun disappeared behind walls of ice 2 miles high, Earth became a frozen prison. The last ice age wasn't just cold weather. It was an extinction event that lasted 100,000 years. Entire species vanished. Civilizations that never got to exist were erased before they could begin. But here, what they do and teach you in school. The Ice Age didn't just kill humanity. It created us. Every major advancement in human history, language, art, technology, society was forged in the brutal darkness of the Ice Age night, and some of what happened in that frozen darkness. It's so disturbing we almost didn't make this story. Because tonight, we're going deep into the ice. Into the caves. Into the unimaginable darkness where our ancestors fought, sacrificed, and discovered secrets that changed everything. Stay with me. Because what you're about to learn will make you see human history in a completely different way. It started slowly. Around 115,000 years ago, something shifted in Earth's orbit just a fraction of a degree. That tiny change triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. Summers became cooler. Snow that fell in winter stopped melting. Year after year, the snow piled higher, compressed, turned to ice, and then the ice began to move. Glaciers the size of continents crept south from the poles, swallowing everything. Forests became tundra. Rivers froze solid 30 feet deep. The ocean levels dropped 400 feet, exposing land bridges that connected entire continents. And the temperature? In some regions, it plummeted to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. Winter nights reached minus 100. At those temperatures, your breath freezes before it leaves your mouth. Your eyelashes freeze shut. Exposed skin dies in minutes. But here's the thing that haunts me. Humans were already living across Europe, Asia, and Africa when this happened. They watched their world transform into something alien. Something deadly, and they had two choices: adapt or die. Most chose death. Not intentionally, they simply couldn't survive. Archaeological evidence shows that human populations crashed by 90% during the Ice Age. Entire genetic lineages gone, forever. But some, a small desperate group, refused to die. And what they did next, in the darkness of the Ice Age night, would determine whether you and I would ever exist. The survivors retreated into caves. Not just for shelter, caves were survival itself. Underground, temperatures remained stable, protected from the screaming winds that could strip flesh from bone. But here's what's chilling. In the Ice Age, night lasted months. This far north, winter meant polar darkness. The sun would dip below the horizon in October and wouldn't return until March. 150 days of continuous night. 150 days of absolute darkness. Imagine living your entire life by firelight. Never seeing the sun. Never knowing warmth. Fire wasn't just important, it was everything. It was life itself. And here's where it gets fascinating. Archaeological evidence from Ice Age caves shows something remarkable. These weren't primitive people mindlessly surviving. They were innovating. They discovered that certain animal fats, mammoth fat, specifically burned longer and brighter than wood. They created primitive lamps, hollowed stones filled with fat, using moss as wicks. These lamps burned for days. They also discovered something else. Something that would change humanity forever. Art. Deep in these caves, thousands of feet from the entrance. In chambers that never saw daylight, they painted. By flickering lamplight, they created images of the animals they hunted. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, cave lions, giant elk. But why? Why spend precious calories, precious fat, precious time creating art when every moment was a fight for survival? Because they needed to teach. Without writing, without books, art became their education system. Young hunters would stare at these paintings by firelight, learning the anatomy of their prey, where to strike, how the animals moved. But some researchers believe something darker. These paintings were rituals. Before a hunt, hunters would touch the images, perform ceremonies in the absolute darkness of the deep cave. asking for permission, asking for forgiveness. Because in the Ice Age, every hunt could be your last. And sometimes they were... Picture this, you're standing on an endless white plain. The wind cuts through you like a blade. The temperature is -50 degrees. You're holding a wooden spear with a stone tip, and 100 yards ahead of you is a mammoth, 14 feet tall, 6 tons of muscle, fur, and rage. Its tusks are like curved swords 12 feet long, and one swing could cut a human in half. This is your target. But here's what makes Ice Age hunting so terrifying. You couldn't do it alone. You couldn't even do it with 5 people. Killing a mammoth required coordination, planning, and strategy. Entire tribes, 30, 40, sometimes 50 people, would work together. They'd track a mammoth for days, just waiting for the right moment. They would dig pit traps covering them with branches and snow. They'd drive the mammoth toward cliffs, toward ice, toward anywhere that gave them an advantage. And when the moment came, when the mammoth fell into the trap or stumbled on the ice, they'd attack. Not with overwhelming strength, but with sheer persistence. Spear after spear after spear. Hours of stabbing, retreating, and attacking again. Watching this 6-ton creature bleed out slowly, desperately trying to rise, to escape, to survive. And you know what's truly haunting? Sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes the mammoth escaped. Sometimes it killed hunters. And sometimes the tribe would track a wounded mammoth for weeks, following the blood trail through the snow, just waiting for it to finally collapse. But when it did, when that mammoth finally died, that single kill could feed a tribe for months. Every single part was used, the meat for food, the bones for tools and even shelter, the hide for clothing, the fat for lamps and warmth. One successful hunt was the difference between survival and extinction for an entire community. And here's something incredible. Archaeologists have found entire dwellings, actual houses, made from mammoth bones. Skulls served as the foundation. Ribs became the walls. Tusks were used as support beams. Everything was covered in hide and packed with snow for insulation. These remarkable structures could house up to 15 people, and they lasted for years. Imagine sleeping inside the skeleton of the very creature you killed to survive. Living inside death itself, surrounded by bones in the eternal darkness of an Ice Age night. It's a powerful image of just how resourceful our ancestors had to be. But this is where the story of survival takes a much darker turn. Because not everyone survived on mammoth meat alone. We need to talk about something that historians often whisper about, something found in Ice Age caves that changes our entire perspective. We need to talk about the evidence of cannibalism. Now, this wasn't happening everywhere, and it wasn't all tribes. But in certain caves scattered across Europe, archaeologists have found human bones with telltale cut marks. They show fracture patterns consistent with marrow extraction. Skulls have been found broken open to access the brain. These are the exact same processing marks found on animal bones from the same period. Before you judge these people, try to understand. This wasn't an act of savagery. This was pure desperation. During the worst periods of the Ice Age, the times we call glacial maximums, animal populations would crash. Entire regions became barren ice deserts. There was nothing to hunt, nothing to eat. Starvation isn't a quick death, it's slow and agonizing. First, your body consumes its fat reserves. Then, it starts on your muscle. Then, your organs. Your immune system shuts down, your brain begins to fail. You become confused, you start to hallucinate. Now imagine being in a tribe of 30 people, trapped in a cave for months, watching each other slowly die. Horrific decisions were made. Some researchers believe that certain tribes practiced what they call mortuary cannibalism. This was consuming the dead as a kind of funeral rite, a way to keep their loved ones with them, to give them a purpose even in death. Others believe it was simply about survival. When someone in the tribe died naturally, their body became a source of food. It became calories. It became life for the rest of the group. But here's the part that keeps me awake at night. We've found evidence of violence on some of these human bones. Blunt force trauma. Defensive wounds. This suggests that some Ice Age tribes didn't wait for people to die naturally. The archaeological evidence is there, silent in the darkness of the caves, in the fragments of bone that tell stories no one wants to hear. This was the price of survival. This was what the Ice Age demanded. And somehow, impossibly, humanity paid that price and survived. Then, around 11,700 years ago, something miraculous happened. The ice began to melt. Not quickly, and not everywhere at once. But slowly, incrementally, the Earth's orbit shifted again. The summers grew warmer. The glaciers retreated. Rivers began to flow, and forests returned to the land. Humanity emerged from the caves. But we weren't the same species that went in. The Ice Age had transformed us, genetically, culturally, and psychologically. We had learned to cooperate on levels never seen before. We developed language complex enough to teach, to plan, to imagine the future. We had created art, religion, and culture. We had learned to engineer our environment, building shelters, creating sophisticated tools, and controlling fire with incredible precision. The humans who survived the Ice Age weren't just the lucky ones. They were the smartest, most adaptable, and most resilient members of our species. They were tested by the very worst that planet Earth could throw at them, and they won. And here's the profound truth. Everything that came after agriculture, cities, civilization, technology, everything was only possible because of the lessons we learned in the darkness of the Ice Age. We learned to plan for winter. We learned to store food. We learned to build permanent shelters. We learned to cooperate in large groups. We learned these things because if we didn't, we died. The Ice Age didn't just shape our history, it shaped us. It shaped our brains, our bodies, and our deepest instincts. When you feel that urge to prepare for hard times, to save, to plan, to worry about the future, that's not just anxiety. That's the Ice Age still whispering in your DNA. It's a voice telling you to remember, to stay ready, because winter is always coming. For your ancestors, winter never truly left. So here we are, sitting in climate-controlled comfort. We have artificial light that banishes the darkness, and food available 24/7. We have safety, security, and warmth. All of it was built on the backs of people who suffered through a living hell. The Ice Age was humanity's crucible. It was the test we weren't supposed to pass. 100,000 years of darkness, starvation, death, and unimaginable hardship. But we passed. And every time you turn on a light, think about the humans who lived by a flickering fire. Every time you're warm in winter, think about the ones who froze. Every time you have more food than you need, think about the ones who had to make impossible choices. They survived so that you could exist. The Ice Age ended over 11,000 years ago, but its lessons are eternal. In the darkness of our past lies the truth of our present. Never forget where you came from. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into our past as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about our incredible human history. We'll see you next time.